Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
G'day and welcome to How I Doubled. I'm your host, Owen Matheson, and I'm absolutely passionate about business growth. I'm fortunate to have a lot of great mates that I've got to know in the marketplace. One of them is Sid Minassian. He's the founder and CEO of Contexti, a market-leading big data consultancy, and host of Show Innovation. Today's episode is called How to Build and Rebuild in the Marketplace. G'day, Sid. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And that was quite a neat little trick you had up your sleeve. They all sang happy birthday for me today.
We got him good.
Yeah, awesome. Nice surprise.
You're welcome, mate. You know, nothing like a bit of chocolate cake for breakfast.
Yes.
Straight after the bacon goes down like a treat.
Goes down like a treat.
So, on to the serious stuff. I mean, How I Doubled is really about practical tips to help business owners and entrepreneurs. What I love about whenever we get together is you've always got some great stories, mate. And I think it'd be great for everyone to understand a little bit about your story, where it all began.
Sure. So I think I've always been ambitious. Right out of high school, the grand plan was to be a hotshot trader in the dealing room. You know, the guys that wear suspenders and you buy low, sell high, that really intelligent
Love it.
stuff.
Boiler room stuff. Yeah.
So I figured out a plan. I wrote over 50 letters to all the banks in Australia asking for a traineeship of some sort while I would have done uni at nights and worked there. And I got over 30 rejection letters. The rest didn't bother getting back to me. But then there was this one ad that was looking for a foreign exchange and derivative settlements clerk for a Japanese investment bank. I applied and somehow I got the role. And the whole grand scheme was work your way through the back office and then eventually make it into the front office. But what happened was a few things. One was I had some really good mentors that were in the back office. Secondly, if you remember Nick Leeson and Barings Bank, the whole bank that the guy that brought down, England's oldest bank, and that brought about a whole series of changes in the industry around regulation, risk, segregation of duties, and technology-led risk management, which meant that as the junior guy who was very keen, I kept putting my hand up to be put on these additional projects, and I learnt a lot around people, process, technology, change. And what it did, it actually allowed me to understand that I've got a passion for the bigger picture rather than sitting in front of a screen buying low, selling high.
Yeah.
So that sort of allowed me to work with people, technology, and change. And even today, I describe myself as a person that is the glue between people, technology, and change, right? So from there, I moved to KPMG, did a few years there. Again, I was still very young at the time, given that I'd started working straight out of high school and I was doing my uni at night. So when I was at KPMG, I'd already had 5 years of quite in-depth work experience. And I also figured that I had the gift of the gab, surprise, surprise. And what I would do is I'd be very good at identifying opportunities and solving problems for the customers that I'd be going and working with, way beyond the scope of what I was being.
That's a very important point you're actually making there about solving problems.
Yeah. That's right. It's being led by the passion of solving problems. It's not about the sale or it's not about the widget or the tech, and we'll talk about that a bit later about lessons learned. But and what happened was I'd bring in deals and I'd come back to the KPMG partners and go, guys, like look at the deals that I'm bringing in, and they'd say, Sid, you're the youngest, most unqualified, overpaid manager we've ever hired. Just shut up and do your job. So that was the start.
Who's this young buck showing us up?
Yeah, it's like,
that's not how things are done.
You got to do your 10
Get back
years
in that back room.
That's right.
Yeah,
and that was fair enough.
Yeah.
And that was the start of my entrepreneurial career. So I started my own consulting company, worked with a number of leading financial services companies across the country. And then I finally landed on the CBA Colonial Integration Program. So you remember the $8 billion merger of Australia's largest bank, Australia's largest fund manager. I was a program manager. And it was on that project where I sort of sat back and went, I really don't have a business here. I'm self-employed. What I'm doing does not scale. It pays really well, but it doesn't scale.
That's actually a good point, if you may, Sid. And I'm sorry, I know you're in a train of thought there.
Oh no, it's the same story.
It is
I can pick it up
problem
anytime.
for so many business owners, isn't it? That they have a job and not a business, and if they go to sell it, and they go, oh, who does the sales? Who does the marketing? Who does the oh, it's all me. I actually don't have a business, and I can't scale. So, and that's where you're sort of going, well, how do I change that?
Yeah, and I talk about that these days when I advise other founders and companies, I talk about the single point of failure and the bottleneck, and I'll come back to this later on, right?
Yeah, good.
But good point there in terms of I was realizing at that time, well, it wasn't a real business.
Yes.
I was just a contractor.
Yeah.
I aspired to having a business. So that was one factor that was working in my head. The other factor was having been on that project.
Yeah.
I said, this cannot be it. We can't in this day and age, and that was in year 2000, it was the year of the Olympics, I remember it really well, be running a integration program where, we were merging people, process, technology, customers, products, and literally it took thousands of files, Microsoft project plans, Word and Excel spreadsheets for issue tracking, risk registers, change requests, budgets, whatever. And it took 14 people in a program office to merge that data to give management a snapshot of what happened 2 weeks ago.
Very inefficient.
And I look at that and I go, this can't be it. And of course I said, I'm the guy to fix that problem.
Nice.
So I gave up the lucrative, now I look back, I go, that was lucrative what I was doing. It was lucrative consulting work to then become poor.
Sounds like a plan.
Which was take a bunch of money, put the house on the line and invest in building a software company. So we built a project management and workflow software product. I had a company called Think Software, and we brought that to market. And effectively what you get with today, you get with Yammer or HipChat or Atlassian's Jira product. It was an integration of that, but it was back in year 2000. We were using, client-server technology, not web and so on. So, timing is so important in business.
You were way ahead of the demand curve there.
Yeah, but I could see to me, it was like, well, it doesn't make sense for one person to go around and collecting data off of everyone. Like if everyone just updates their little bit in a single portal, wow, we all get an update. And of course, now we've got Facebook and LinkedIn and all these tools that effectively are based on the same principles. But anyway, we brought the product out to market, sold it into Combank, Deloitte, Wesfarmers College. So I had to learn how to sell in the streets effectively.
Which would have been hard for you,
mate.
It was
hard.
You're a bit of a wallflower.
Yeah, that's right. But actually, sales is a process. It's not about your self-confidence or your ability to have lack of shame, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a process and it's a strategy.
Yes.
I had no experience selling software products.
Right.
I knew how to sell myself.
Yes.
But selling a software product where there's far more risk, there's far more change management involved and there's no one buyer, and the risk factor is if they adopt the product, they're sort of, even if they can cancel the contract, they're stuck with it. Whereas if they don't like you or me as a contractor, well, you're gone the next day and it's okay, right?
So you really
they'll say, Sid, did it work out?
You had to put yourself in their shoes around.
I had to put myself shoes to engineer what it meant to sell.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot around that.
Yeah.
But look, the point was where I had the next sort of step change in the business was I'd sell to management, but people wouldn't use the product. And I couldn't understand why. So I kept spending time with the customers, and we got all these throwaway reasons. You don't have a Gantt chart, it's not web enabled, you don't have timesheets in your... And we, like a little puppy dog trying to impress the master, was like, yep, we'll do that. We'll add that. And I just kept sinking more money and more time into this thing. And then finally one day I had this aha moment. I was running a workshop for, actually it was Combank. And I was in there with a bunch of senior managers trying to tell them how this tool's going to help them govern better, change, manage issues and risks and whatever. And it hit me that I'm not actually competing with SharePoint, Microsoft Project Server, all those other tools that I thought I was competing with. My biggest competitor was email, because people use email to get work done, right? If I've got an urgent action, I don't really care to go and put it in some project management tool. I'll email you.
Yep.
It's the same in sales. If I've got a hot lead, I'm not going to put it in Salesforce.com. I'm going to text you, I'm going to email you, and then later for reporting purposes, for the masters, we go and re-enter and double enter that information.
Yeah.
So at that point I figured, look, either I'm going to figure out how to capture data at the point of creation without creating behavioral change, which is what we were doing with all these tools. Doesn't matter how good you make the UI, UX.
Yeah.
You're asking people to change their behavior.
Yeah, that's right.
Or I was going to find a different business to do because I didn't feel like I had any competitive advantage sitting in Australia with an unfunded business, building an enterprise software company with nothing really special.
Can I just ask you too, there is a danger for anyone out there that's having a go at building a software company. There'll be a lot of lessons you're going to talk about shortly. But one of the big dangers is over-engineering. What you were talking about, being the puppy dog.
Yes.
That's a danger, isn't it? That you listen to every customer about every preference and it's not commercial to go and solve all of their problems at once.
Yep.
It's more about going to the market and seeing, is there consensus on particular problems and then driving the function? Because you would have learned a lot about
There's
that.
consensus, and then there's the other thing you would have heard me talk about before. I talk about, is there hair on fire and checkbook out?
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Hair on fire meaning,
Yes.
are they self-realized in the pain that you are looking to solve? And is the checkbook out meaning, is it real enough that they're spending money on it today?
Yep.
So if I come up to you with a great idea, that's one thing. You're going to be, you're either going to like the idea, you're either going to not want to disrespect me, or you're genuinely enthused by my enthusiasm. But what will happen the minute I walk out the door? You're not going to take any action. But if it's a real hair on fire checkbook out scenario where it's a real pain that you're wanting to solve, then you're gonna spend money on it, right? Like it's a must-have. Like I know our kids both play soccer, and let's say your kid needs shin pads. That's like it's a no decision. You will spend money on it, and if it's the game day and he doesn't have shin pads, and I say it's $50, you'll pay for it.
It's done. Yeah, that's
done,
right. That guy
There's
can clean up.
Yeah,
if
you don't want your
selling
kid
shin pads right
correct,
then.
right?
Yeah,
and that's the point. It's not a, hey, by the way, take this thing. Buy this bottle of water. It's got some vitamins in it. It's not that for the game.
How
it's
do
shin pads.
you
Can see,
discover that? Because that's actually a good point. You and I are both deal makers. We love the thrill of the chase and a sale.
Yes.
And a big thing is actually getting them to be prepared for them to say no.
Yes.
You've actually got to dig deep, press for the objections, not just think things are going well.
Yep.
Because that's a good thing for business owners out there.
I think there's two thoughts here.
Yeah.
One is when you're trying to sell.
Yes.
The other one though is when you're trying to validate a market opportunity.
Yes. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
the problem we all do, and I've been I've been a big a maker of this mistake, is that you sell when you're actually trying to be listening. Right? We're trying to convince the other party that look how what this idea will be and look how great it will be, and we've already conceived this thing in a closed room and we're trying to then pitch it to them, and we're calling that market validation. That's not market validation. No. That's just more Owen and Sid just being passionate about whatever that is topical at the time. So I'll come back to talk a little bit about that. That's a very good point, there's a real point that you raised there. But the point is, when I talk about your job is to validate that.
Yes.
It's truly validate. And how do you validate it? You do ask for the order, but you're not asking for the order to convince them. You're asking for the order to see if they are the true buyer.
Yeah.
Are
they committed?
Are they going to put skin in the game a real pain point
to solve that problem? So I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, I figured that was, the position I was in. I needed to find an innovation inside of email. And to cut a long story short, ended up raising, actually what we did, and this is the lesson that I'd learned. I said, I can't take any more steps without validation, and I can't take any more steps by self-funding this thing. I was like tapped out.
Very smart. So you had to push pause.
It wasn't smart. It was just a position of crisis.
It was just where you were.
And I talk about crisis and constraint creating the right outcome, right? When we're flushed in money, you're not making the right decisions.
Yeah, it's very true.
Right? You're too fat and comfortable. It's only when you're cornered and it's just like you just got to do this to survive is when you go,
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.